Assessors must be able to review assessments. This lesson provides guidance to assessors about reviewing assessments and dealing with candidate appeals. Assessment is a quality assurance process, and in order the review to reflect quality at the end, we must have quality in every stage of the assessment. When reviewing assessments, the assessor is checking that the assessment is valid. That means the assessor must review the assessment and determine if accurately measures the job-critical knowledge, skills, and abilities required for proficient job performance. Assessment is the process of collecting evidence and making judgments on whether competency has been achieved. The purpose of assessment is to confirm that an individual can perform to the standard expected in the workplace as expressed in the relevant industry competency standards. The questions considered by the assessor when reviewing the assessment should include: was the assessment conducted under realistic working conditions that adequately assessed the candidate's abilities to perform his or her duties on the job? Was the candidate required to demonstrate the skills and knowledge that are identified in the assessment as critical to proficiency? Was the candidate required to rely on his or her own skills and knowledge? Always review assessments to ensure the design is suitable for the level of the vocational qualification. Before we go further, and because we like understanding more than definition, in this course, review and verify are the same thing, and we will try to say verify from here. In the extreme, internal verification can involve the complete reassessment of a candidate by a different assessor from your own company. And external verification can involve the complete reassessment of a candidate by a different assessor from your accrediting body. Verification can involve partial reassessment of a candidate by a different assessor. Verification can mean just an examination of documents used in an assessment. We think it would be helpful to imagine that you are working for a vocational training and assessment company, like SS&T. It would be helpful to imagine the company having a strong assessment philosophy and being divided into several departments. Before we look at the work that takes place in the various departments, one of the guiding principles of this vocational training and assessment company is borrowed from Peter Drucker. It is, you cannot manage what you do not measure. Vocational assessors, basically, are measures of worker competency. Measurement comes primarily from accurate records of diligent work. The company also believes that quality assurance leads the company and insists on quality from every department. In the Analyzing Competency department, rookie assessors are reviewing occupational standards and job descriptions. And when they are lucky, they are out in the field observing workers doing tasks and questioning work supervisors, and recording their findings. The Designing department takes the information from the analysts and must now focus on how to assess candidates for this work. The assessment designers will consider the working conditions and equipment used in the work. The designers also consider the current profile of the workers and the worker profile desired by the employer. They record their findings on the assessment procedure and other documents. The Developing department takes the information from the designers and must now start creating the assessment tools. The developers will use the assessment procedures and the occupational standards to complete the dimensions of competency for the assessment. The developers create the practical demonstration assessments first. Second, they create an effective project where the candidates have deliverables. The developers create the oral questions to cover emergency and other contingency scenarios. If the job includes writing tasks, the developers create written assessments that reflect the writing tasks. While creating the assessment tools, the developers are mapping each task and question back to the occupational standard. The Training department takes the assessment instruments from the developers and must now create related learning material and effectively deliver it to trainees. And you guessed it. Training records for each student, including formative assessment, are carefully maintained. As the end of training approaches, the Analyzing Competency department observes the trainees, makes comparisons with what they observed in the field, and makes recommendations about who is ready to be a candidate for assessment. When the Planning department gets a list of candidates recommended for assessment, they grab the assessment procedure and their phone. The planners will contact the candidates, the assessing department, the stakeholder that control the equipment required, and all other stakeholders about availability and scheduling. The planning department will also do an independent check on candidate readiness, because that is what quality looks like. When the assessors who conduct assessments are advised that one is coming up, they will review the assessment instruments, and will conduct an independent mapping of the tasks and questions in the assessment, back to the occupational standard. This assessor will also check candidate readiness. Internal verifiers are identified as the person responsible for monitoring the assessment process within the institution. That is the NTA definition. So the verification department is quality assurance for the work of the other departments. So verifications happen normally. If the company did one assessment each month, they should internally verify each one. Let us consider if the company assessed 60 secondary school students in 1 month, an agreed percentage should be internally verified. If there are any appeals of assessment outcomes, there will be an internal verification. And keeping it 100% real, if one of the candidates you certified is involved in an industrial accident soon after you did so, there will be an internal verification. Internal verification findings are used by the design team to make improvements in assessment planning, assessment tools and methods, as well as trainer and assessor training. Let's have a look at the team for the Assessor 5-a-side Champions League. In goal, we have Planner Assessor, Brazilian International. He keeps things organized from the back. He makes sure everyone and everything is where they should be at the right time. On the right side, we have Competency Analyzer Assessor. He is a local lad, from right here in assessment. He wanted to play for this team since he was 4, we don't think he will take that transfer to Academia United. He makes those runs up and down, looking at job descriptions and interviewing workers. On the left, coming back from injury, is the Scotsman, Developer Assessor. We expect him to deliver exquisite assessment tools to his teammates. Up front is the man himself, the Egyptian king, Conductor Assessor. We all know that if he's given the right tools, he will hit the back of the net. And finally, the maestro in the middle, Designer Assessor. We call him the tweaker. He always wants to adjust it, just a little bit to make it better. Even great teams need solid backroom staff. This great team has a great coach. He is the internal verifier and the leader. We know the German gets upset even when Assessment United wins, but the performance wasn't perfect. But he's always there to support and advise. If at the end of the assessment the candidate failed to demonstrate proficiency, the assessor can work together with him to develop an improvement plan to prepare for reassessment. Conditions for conducting the reassessment should be specified in the assessment procedure. Specific issues to consider are the period between initial assessment and reassessment, and any changes in the performance standards and scoring procedures that could be adopted for the reassessment. The student manual provided at the beginning of most courses usually outlines the appeal policy and process in detail. And appealing is reviewed during planning at the pre-assessment briefing. So at the assessment debrief, both assessor and candidate should know what needs to be done. A checklist for dealing with a candidate appealing a not competent assessment outcome should include: ask the candidate to put the appeal in writing. The original assessor discusses the appeal with the internal verifier, and the IV collaborates with the original assessor to organize the reassessment. If the candidate is not satisfied with the judgment of the internal verifier, or the outcome of the reassessment, the appeal is taken to the training authority. The training authority will organize a reassessment with an independent external verifier. The decision of the external verifier is the final step. And now we are at the end of the assessor course material. Good luck with your assessments, and your career in assessment. Remember that the Assessor of the Year award goes to no one. An assessor's successes come when the candidates he certifies get a job they worked toward. Assessors are successful when certified candidates get positive work performance appraisals, and the pay rises that follow. But you will hear and see all your bad reviews. Formative assessments are used to monitor student learning to provide ongoing feedback that can be used by instructors to improve their teaching and by students to improve their learning. More specifically, formative assessments help students identify their strengths and weaknesses and target areas that need work. There is no grade awarded.